Welcome to One Tired Teacher, episode 122. Help Kids Learn to Fail, a path towards unwavering resilience. Today, I have a very special guest and a very dear friend on the show. She's been on the show before, and her name is Kerry Tracy. She is an incredible educator and host of an amazing opportunity for all teachers to learn and grow, and that is STEMCon 2021. I've been talking about it for weeks and weeks and weeks. Kerry is the spearhead, the hostess with the mostest. She's unbelievable, and she created and gathered all these passionate people to talk about STEM and thinking and learning, and it's just amazing. So Kerry is the guest today, and she is talking about failure and the importance of failure and what we can do to help our kids see this as a good thing, and maybe even help us see it as a good thing. I hope you stick around.
Welcome to One Tired Teacher. And even though she may need a nap, this teacher is ready to wake up and speak her truth about the trials and treasures of teaching. Here she is, wide awake. Wait, she's not asleep right now, is she? She is awake, right? Okay. From Trina Debery Teaching and Learning, your host, Trina Debery.
Hey, so yes, I'm awake. I'm not asleep. I almost said yes, I'm asleep. No, yes, I'm awake, and I'm ready to talk about failure. Oh, it's a hard topic. It can be such a tricky one because you feel like that's a bad thing. Like we have been almost raised to believe that, like shown to believe that. When we're talking about test scores and grades and things like that, it does feel like failure is not something that we're striving for. So it can be a completely different paradigm shift for sure. Before we get started, I want to say that Kerry is like just an unbelievable educator, and she's so brilliant, and she's very passionate. I love talking to her, and I know that you're going to get a lot out of this. And I wanted to remind you that she was actually on episode 72, All Things STEM, and we talked about STEM. It was almost a year ago now, before all this craziness happened in the world, and we were getting ready to do STEMCon 2020, and we had no idea what it was going to be and how amazing it was going to be. And it really was. It was really unbelievable. Kerry's also she has a store and a website, Feel Good Teaching, and she's got some amazing resources. You're going to want to check that out. I'll link to her in the show notes, and you can see more about her. But you can also hear her speak and see the amazing things that she has put together with STEMCon 2021. So I hope that you will join us for that, because it's coming up. It's like this weekend. It's this weekend. By the time this episode comes out on Monday, it will be the weekend. That weekend when STEMCon 2021 takes place. I know you're not going to want to miss it. And I know that you may be feeling overwhelmed and beaten down and frustrated and tired, so tired. Or at least maybe that's how I'm feeling, because I just spent 3 days out of 5 testing. And if you've listened to my podcast before, you know that testing is not my favorite. And it's not that I'm anti-test. Like, I don't think that kids should take tests, because I do think we have to determine what kids know. And sometimes they're going to look a little bit more formal. Sometimes they're going to look like authentic assessment. That's what I really like. But I understand that tests are a part of it, and that we are kind of all tested in different ways throughout life. So I understand. But high stakes testing, like, do we have to do that to kids? Is that really necessary? And what is the point? I feel like there's like 2 objectives here. One of which is evaluating teachers, which I think is complete and utter crap. I'm just going to say that. I think it's ridiculous to evaluate teachers based on that. There's so many factors you can't see that are involved in that test score. So I think there's better ways of doing that. We don't have to do it with high stakes testing. And if that's our only objective, why would we put our children through that? The other thing is that I think that we're trying to determine what kids know. However, and like compare them to all the other kids all over the state or world or whatever. But are we really determining what they know when we ask questions that are purposely meant to confuse them? That's the part that doesn't make sense to me. And it's just so much time that we spend on these things. And I'm not going to go on and on about this. I'm going to stop talking about it. But I'm just saying, I get it if you're tired, because I have been exhausted. It really wore me out this week. 120 minutes writing assessment was the last day of it. And it's just like watching paint dry. It's so boring and so heartbreaking, and just the whole thing is brutal. So if you're feeling like that, I totally know how you feel. I get where you're coming from. If you're feeling overwhelmed or maybe you've made a commitment not to take work home with you, and I honor that. I respect it. I'm proud of you. I celebrate that. This isn't taking work home with you. This is refueling your teacher soul. This is refueling your own personal soul. It's like coming together and collaborating with like-minded people, and it's being inspired and motivated and believing in hope that we can do something better, that we can change this current system. And I need a little bit of hope. How about you? So if you do, then join us at STEMCon 2021, and you can find more information in the show notes. I'll link to it. And also, if you're driving along and I got to remember that, it's TrinaDebery-teaching-and-learning.com/STEMCon21. All one word, STEMCon21. And you will find more information, or you will find how to get to more information all about STEMCon. So today, let's get to today, because today is important. We're talking about the importance of failure. We're talking about a path towards resilience, unwavering resilience. So I want us to get on with that, because this is going to be a really good one. Let's get on with the show. So welcome back, Kerry. I'm so excited to have you here today. Kerry Tracy from Feel Good Teaching, Kerry Tracy Feel Good Teaching is the name of her store. She is an expert and an amazing STEM educator who has so much knowledge. So welcome back, Kerry.
Well, thank you. That was such a lovely greeting. I love to be back.
Well, I'm happy that you're back. She's been on the podcast before. I'll link to that in the show notes, because that was another excellent episode, and I'm excited about that. And we are back for year 2 of STEMCon 2021. Yay!
Yay!
Yay. It's so exciting. And it's so unbelievable. I can't even, every time I talk to someone about it, there's something else has happened between the time that I talk to someone. So it's like, I'm afraid to say anything, but it's just so.
Yeah, it's been really exciting. I think, we always know that when we launch, like when we first announced, like registration is open, we know that things are going to be getting added to that as we move along. Some of that sort of pre-planned. And then some of that just sort of happens out of, luck or circumstance, where, somebody will reach out and want to see if they can contribute. And if there are still spaces and time and it works out, then we are happy to add them. That's actually how our virtual science fair panel that Steve Spangler is on, that was not a planned thing. That just sort of kismet, it all kind of came together and we lucked out. And then I think probably one of the things that recently you and I have been talking about is all of the raffle prizes that vendors have been donating. We're over $20,000.
That's insane. And it was just like 18,000, maybe like a day or two ago. Yeah. When I talked to Claire, and we just talked about that too on the podcast. And then by the time this comes out, who knows?
Yeah, who knows? It's all changing very fast. But what we do know is that we have it's actually over 48 pre-recorded sessions is what we have. And then we have something like, I don't know, somewhere between 8 and 12 live sessions and panels and access for a full year. It's going to be amazing. I can't wait. I am really looking forward to April 16th through the 19th. And then anyone who's listening, if you're listening and you're thinking those aren't good dates for you, you actually get access to everything for a full year. So it's okay if those dates aren't good, or if you're just tired right now and you don't want to do another PD, I get that. but you don't want to miss this.
I
Like
don't
you
think
can,
so
it's
either. Yeah.
okay if you can't come live, but like you will
But
want to
you
look at
could
this over the summer.
absolutely. And I've told this story like 3 times now, but I have to say it again because my friend that I worked with for a long time, we were platooned, and it
Mhm.
was my teaching partner. And I was telling her, I'm like, you've got to go. Cause I told her to go listen to Yen's episode,
Oh
which
yeah.
she was like on fire about. And I'm going to link to that in the show notes. And she's like, oh my goodness. I mean, she was just going on and on about it. And I'm like, you've got to come to STEMCon. And I'm like, I'm not trying to sell you, I
Yeah.
would buy it for you. The only reason I'm not going to buy it for her is that, you know how sometimes when someone buys you something and then you just are like, yeah, I'll get to it later.
Yeah.
Like when you have some skin in the game, you actually do it. And
Yes.
I actually want her to do it. And she's like, I've just made this deal where I'm not going to bring work home. And I'm like, this is so different. It's not work. It's like
Right.
fuel for your soul. I mean, I
Oh
keep saying
yeah.
that. Yeah, that because I really think that that is true. And I didn't feel like I was like, bye, bye, bye. I felt like I was like, no, you don't understand the experience. The experience is just, there's no words. It's like, it's magical.
I think when we think about like the very best PD that you've ever been to, when you're done with it, you feel energized,
Yeah.
like there's something about being in community with other passionate educators
Yes, that's
that
it.
is revitalizing. And that's how I felt last year. And so I feel very confident that we're going to be able to do that again this year. The lineup is incredible and I hope you come. Whoever's listening, you should
Yeah.
come.
Yeah, I think so too. I think you should come too. So, okay. So let's talk about the importance of failure because you're actually doing a session on failure in STEMCon. So that will
Yes.
be even more exciting to listen to. But like, why is it so important? I mean, I know this, but I really want to know your opinion. Why is it so important for us to let kids fail or to even
Yes.
create situations in where they might?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and actually, this session that I'm doing is called If You Want Successful Students, Let Them Fail. And then as I started to do my presentation, I realized I should have phrased that a little bit differently. I should have said, if you want successful students, teach them how to fail, which I will get into. But let me answer your
Yeah.
question first, which was
Okay.
why is it important? Because there's no way to go through your life without encountering failure.
Yeah.
And I believe I'm obsessed. I mean, I'm completely obsessed with the idea of productive failure. And part of that is because I'm what Angela Duckworth calls a fragile perfect in her book.
Mm.
Her book is called Grit. And if you guys haven't looked into that, check it out from the library. It's very good. But the idea is that, we've heard a lot about this where kids will get into college or sometimes like into their adulthood, into their jobs, never really having encountered like a serious failure. And so the first time that hits you, the later that happens in life, the more debilitating it is because we don't have the muscles, right? We didn't build up the
Yes.
muscles. We don't
Yes.
know what to do, right?
Mhm.
And so you have some kids who are doing very, very well in like the current school kind of structure. They're great test takers. They know how to get those straight A's. And
Mhm.
so, and that this was me as a kid,
Mhm.
so you develop this sort of false sense of security as to like, I'm unstoppable, like I'm
Yeah.
amazing, like I'm so smart, there's just like this stuff's easy for me. And then when you hit your first failure, it's instead of it just being like, oh, that's just a normal part of the learning process. Instead, it hits you like a ton of bricks and like it's an identity crisis
Yeah.
for people. And so that's why I think it's so important, um, is is that you can't avoid it. And I do think if we look at every major like huge success story, you look at your Oprah Winfrey's or your Elon Musk's, Bill Gates, like all these amazing people, if you look at their biographies, they're riddled with failure.
Yeah.
And so if we haven't learned how to like push past a failure and be resilient, bounce back and keep going, how many people, how many Bill Gates, how many Oprah Winfrey's, how many of these people could we have that we don't, simply because they haven't learned how to persevere? And when they get hit with the failure, it hurts so much
Yeah. They don't know
that
how to
they
get back
can't
up.
keep going.
Yeah. What about Okay, I think that makes total sense, especially for kids that do really well at school and don't
Mhm.
experience that until later.
Right.
But then I also think about the kids that actually failure is a regular part of their lives. Like
Yes.
it's a constant struggle. It's school is always hard for them. It's a place where they're unhappy, miserable, and don't see a value in themselves as a learner. And so I think they too benefit from understanding what failure looks like in a productive way because it teaches them
Absolutely.
those muscles of grit and perseverance, but it also shows them. I love when people do the whole, and you've talked about this before, where you flip it and then like your goal ends up like whatever they did as a failure now becomes the goal. Like I always, you know what I'm talking about.
I'm
I
not sure I'm following.
Yeah, you told me this. I think it was you where the maybe it was Yin, but I thought it was you. So where they've taken whatever the challenge is, whatever
Mhm.
the project is, and the element that caused the failure, now they have reversed it. So they're looking for that. Like for example, if I had like I did a challenge with my fifth graders based on my Piggy and Gerald challenge cards,
Mhm.
which you get at STEMCon for free. But so anyway, so one of the it's simple. It was just a simple challenge. We read a story. We did that work, and then they had to create an object because in the story, Piggy has an object that she drops and it breaks. It actually
Mhm.
ends up being a break apart toy on purpose, but she doesn't know that at first. And so the kids were creating solutions to Piggy's problem, and so they had to create an object that you could hold at your height level, drop, and it wouldn't break. So
Mhm.
so there was different things that they had to figure out in order to make that happen. And so then and one of the groups was doing something, they dropped it, it broke, and I asked them, I'm like, well, what did you learn from that failure? And they went, failure.
Oh
And then
yeah.
like all the kids behind me are like, what, she said failure. Like it was like the worst thing ever. And so then we had this unbelievable conversation about failure and what that means. And I'm like, it's a good thing because now you know what not to do.
Right.
And that's just takes you one step closer to getting what you want. But I mean, when I say flip is like now you make the objective to break when it drops, or
All
you
right.
take, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you take the failure and you make that. Now they've learned those things. And if they didn't, then they're like the kids that failed were like, yes, like now I know how to do that. And the kids
Right.
that didn't fail are like, oh man, now I have to do that too. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I think that whoever I learned that from, I was like, oh, I think that's so fascinating because those kids that always fail are now celebrated because
Right.
their failure was the goal.
Right.
So does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't me, but I love the idea of that.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Yeah,
I thought it was really cool.
and you brought up a really good point, that it's one of the things that I think when I started doing STEM challenges, that I would get sort of frustrated if my kids didn't um like didn't know how, almost like I expected them to be able to code switch
Mhm.
into now failure is a good thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, why on earth would they think that? There is no message in our culture really
Yeah.
that would suggest that failure is acceptable. I
Yeah.
mean, there's a lot of, we do a good job of talking a good talk.
Oh,
We
you're right.
talk about growth
Yeah.
mindset and we talk, try again. And we have a lot of things that are really just words. But when you look at how is it actually treated, like failure is often ridiculed,
Hmm.
in our culture. And we have just such a hyper focus on achievement
Yes.
and the end product and the end result.
And the grade and the test score. And
Exactly.
yes.
And so to expect kids to get any message from that other than what it is, which
Hmm.
is it doesn't matter what the process is, doesn't matter what you did along the way. All that matters is at the end, what's this grade?
Yeah.
And I think they're getting that message a whole lot.
Yes.
And I also think that, in some cases, there are just a lot of obstacles, right? To like trying to help kids deal with failure productively that we have to be aware of in order to find ways to combat that or work against it. And so some of it, a lot of it's the societal messages, right? A lot of it's the messages they get in school,
Yes.
their whole lives. They also are getting a lot of messages or from us that we are not always aware we're sending. Like, as I was saying, I consider myself a recovering fragile perfect. There's a lot of baggage I have with failure. And I've done a lot of work for myself, like on like understanding like the beauty and like necessity of learning from productive failure. But in my early days of teaching, there was a lot of baggage that I was carrying around that, I know that I was, whether I might have been saying the right things, my actions undermined some of the things that I was saying,
Yes.
in my classroom. And so shifting into design-based learning and STEM challenges really helped me sort of get my messaging in line with like my actions for my students, and giving all of those kids, like a lot of those kids you mentioned, who are not the test takers,
Mm-hmm.
are the ones, we've talked about this before, they are the ones who shine when you
Yeah.
get into design-based learning.
Yes.
And so that's part of leveling that playing field as well.
Yeah.
But and a bulldozer, another obstacle we have is like bulldozer or helicopter parents sometimes are really,
Oh,
they don't
yes.
want their kids to experience negative feelings of any kind,
Yeah.
which only sets them up for more dramatic failure when they become adults. So we have to learn some I don't know that we can necessarily change a helicopter
No,
or a bulldozer parent, but
no,
at least to understand that that dynamic impacts what we're
our,
trying to do for their kids. And
yes.
we need to sort of maybe work on some messaging that might help them understand
Yeah.
that they're, that you do need to develop there. I think of it like muscles, you do need to develop the muscles to bounce back from failure. But I also think one of the things that we can be doing or thinking about doing in our classrooms is, and this is sort of like the basis of the presentation that I'm doing at STEMCon, is we teach our kids a lot of skills for how to be successful. We teach them, circle this, highlight that, draw a picture, all these different things are strategies to succeed. How many strategies do we teach them on how to fail?
Yeah.
Like actual things you can do
Yeah.
to handle failure productively, as opposed to just try again, which, like words, we have a lot of words.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And what I had noticed is that my words weren't working.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like I'm saying all the right things. And yet, they aren't
I don't feel that way.
again.
Yeah. Yeah. They're crying in the corner. Yeah. No, there's so many things that you've said that I feel like I want to say something to, like so many that I had to write some down because I was like, I know I'm going to forget. And one of the things, I don't even know which one to address first. One of the things is, I think it's interesting that our own mindset has, like, it plays such a big part, like your experience and our own personal experiences as teachers comes into the classroom with you, and sometimes to your benefit and the students' benefits, and sometimes not. And so I think it's interesting that like you're thinking about those fragile perfects because that was you,
Right.
while I'm thinking those struggling students because that was me. And
Right.
and because that was my son. And so I'm like, and ultimately was my daughter who fooled us all with her excellence in school, her overcompensating, but then in the end couldn't master the test, like
Right.
couldn't get the score she needed on the test. So I think that is, something that we have to take in consideration sometimes when we're looking at teaching. But I also think, and then there's the other part about the messages that we send from school, because if we are talking about celebrating failure and and that's the language that we're using in our classroom, and we are, putting our students in situations where they are failing, or we are flipping it and making it a celebration of that failure or whatever, any of those things, we're still almost negating that with, but you've got to get an A, or with well, you have to get this certain kind of test score. And we are going to teach you the strategies to figure out these kinds of questions, but then we're not going to let you do them on the actual test, because we're going to make it either electronic so you can't cross it out, or we're going to tell you you can't write on the test. Like that's what we're doing in my state. So it's you teach them how to eliminate the question, the answers that are not, you go like, cross these out because there's for sure are not the correct answer, which helps people like me who have like ADD and can easily get distracted.
What?
If you just get this out of my way, I no
Yes.
longer have to focus on this. Now I'm making a 50-50. Now my odds have just increased
Right.
significantly. And but you can't do that. You can't use those strategies. And so that's where I'm like, it tells the kid, we're not celebrating failure. We're only celebrating one way, and the right way that we've deemed the right way. And then even with the whole Common Core, like, we're going to teach you these different ways of looking at math, which I actually really like, but
Mhm.
looking at these different ways of math. And then in the end, it doesn't matter what method or strategy you use, because the ultimate goal is to get that one question right. It doesn't matter what process you took. It's to get that
Yeah.
question right. So I feel like, what do we do? This makes me really angry, actually. I feel myself getting angry. What do
Yeah.
we what do we do in that situation? Like, what do we do?
I mean, I was listening, by the way. I haven't gotten all the way through the episode because it's a meaty and long episode,
It
but the
is
one that
long.
you
Yeah.
did with Dr. Jen Verhoeven the other day, I'm about halfway through it. Um, I do think we need to be working towards some kind of a rebellion or a revolution, but in the meantime, the reality is our kids are still having to take these terrible tests, right?
Mhm.
I think that one thing that we can be trying to do in our own classrooms is to do our very best not to communicate the importance of those tests, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, because they aren't about learning, and to a large extent they're not even really about assessing
No, no,
great,
no.
actual what
No,
knowledge, right?
they're about figuring out if you can trick the kid.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I try to do to the best of my ability is really not to pay much attention to them at all. And the reality is too, your principals care about this, and they're going to be looking at it to determine if you're a good teacher.
Yep.
So it's not, you can't ignore it completely, but it became, the kind of thing where it was like, oh, we might have some morning work, some bell work where there's a question that's set up in a way like the test question would be. So they're getting a little bit of that, every day, but I don't hammer it. I just don't. I mean, and the thing is, when you teach kids how to think
Mm.
critically and
Mhm.
also how to fail so that they aren't scared of failure, because a
Yes.
lot of the some things that get in the way for kids when they're taking their tests is the stress, right? Of like, what if I don't do well? And if we have taken away some of the stigma of failure, then that, which doesn't help, right? Because it gets you in a
Mhm.
panic and it brings up your anxiety and it makes you less able to think, right?
Mhm.
But if you don't look at failure as something that's like,
The
an
worst thing
assault
in the
on your
world.
character,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Something that's like a permanent, bad,
No, you're right.
no,
That's so true. Yes,
then
an assault on your character. That's perfect.
that is well, it's what it feels like for a lot
Yes.
of people, right? I mean,
Yes.
because of the messages that we've sent. And it
Yes.
shouldn't. All it
No.
is data. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of like the thing that this is why I'm completely obsessed with it, is like, it's so powerful if you can look at failure as data
Mhm.
and take the emotion out of it. And it's hard. It's
Yeah.
really, really hard to do. And you mentioned earlier that, I keep referring back to Fragile Perfects because that's, like you said, that's
Yeah.
who I am. That's what I relate to. But the thing is, the strategies about, handling failure productively really do apply to all
Absolutely.
kinds of
Yes.
people.
Yes.
The difference is with with your high achievers, you might have to do more to trigger the failure on purpose because they
Yeah.
aren't getting triggered by their day-to-day classwork. And so they aren't getting the practice they need. And everybody, high achievers, struggling students, everybody in between, everybody needs so much practice with
Yes.
failure.
Yes.
And I always like to say, like, kids should be failing early and often.
Uh-huh.
There's no other way to develop the muscles. There's no other way to kind of get used to the idea of thinking of failure as just nothing but data
Yeah.
if you don't encounter it
If
enough.
you don't encounter it.
And that's why, like,
And
STEM
also
challenges.
encounter it in a productive way, because even
Yes.
while I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, okay, even those kids, like, I do think of my son often in conversations with
Mhm.
when I'm talking to teachers. Any of those kind of things makes me think of him and many other kids along the line that
Mhm.
I have encountered. And I think, well, I don't feel like he learned how to embrace failure. And even though it continued to happen to him over and over and over and over again,
Mhm.
his response was shutting down and
Then
being like,
that's normal.
yes, like, I
Totally
don't want to
normal.
do this anymore. I want to escape it. I want to leave it. I'm going to skip sixth period and go to seventh period 81 times in the school year.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
So his avoidance tactic, I'm like, okay, so in that case, like, well, that makes me feel like, I failed, schools failed him. And so
Yeah.
if we did fail him and we're embracing failure, then we need to take what we learned from him and take what we learned from those kids, and we need to figure out how to do it better, how to do
Oh,
it
yes.
differently. And that those kids need to see that, like, instead, like, let me try a different strategy rather than just, I'm going to shut down, or I'm going to avoid, or I'm going to
Yeah.
go to the bathroom and not come out for a significant amount of time. I
Yep.
had kids that used to do that too. So I really, so when you say that, especially the idea of looking at it like it's part of its data, it just tells me what I need to do differently next time, instead of
And it
it
doesn't
is
even
the
necessarily tell you what you need to do differently. It just gives you like, it's one thing that didn't work.
yes,
Um,
yes,
and then from there, and so, okay, so let me back up a little bit, because you made a
okay,
really good point that no one ever taught me how to fail productively.
yeah,
No one ever taught me that. So when I went into school and I was a teacher, I didn't teach my kids that either, because it wasn't a thing that I knew
yeah,
how to do. I also hadn't I spend so much time thinking about this now, right? Because I feel like it's the key to unlock everything in somebody's life. Because if you aren't scared to fail, you can accomplish so much more.
oh, for sure,
And you can live a bigger life. You can live like a life that you want to live, right? Like that to me is so inspiring.
yeah,
And because I want creative risk takers, right? And so that's actually kind of where this started. Was I wanted to figure out, why don't people take risks?
yeah, because
Well,
they're
mostly
afraid to
because
fail.
they're afraid to stand out, or they're afraid to fail, right?
Yeah,
And so then, okay, of course people are scared to fail. Like, it feels awful. Like,
yeah,
and so you avoid it, you shut down, and all of that's normal, right? And so my reaction as a teacher to that kind of thing in the early days was, I mean, I would try not to communicate it, but I would be frustrated with my students, like,
yeah,
that they wouldn't keep going. And then,
yeah,
like, the reality is, would I keep going? Like, if I had like if I were failing and I felt like it was an assault on my character, and I felt like it made me bad or lesser or weaker or dumber or whatever, would I keep putting myself out there?
yeah,
No, I don't think I would. I would protect myself. And so what do we do to combat that, right? That's the thing. Well, I don't know what we do, because no one's ever taught me, other than
yeah,
saying, try again, like,
yeah,
keep going. You
keep
can do
going,
it.
yeah,
And what's one of the things I said in my presentation is, like, if I'm spiraling out in like the negative talk, like, and you come up to me and like chipper as hell say,
yeah,
sorry, pardon the friend, and like all chipper and come up to me and say, you can do it.
yeah,
Like, it makes me feel violent inside. It doesn't,
yeah.
I'm not going to actually do anything violent, but it makes me want to,
Oh, I
you know?
yes, no, I know.
And so what do we do? It's like toxic positivity, right?
Yes,
And,
yes, which
and it
I
doesn't
feel like
help.
I feel like teachers get that all the time. And
Yes,
so
we
then
do.
and then we in turn will do that same thing. No, you're
Mhm.
right. So
So there are some things we can
yeah.
do, and I don't want to kind of give away everything,
Okay. No,
because
yeah.
that's what my
Just
session is about.
okay,
But
so they'll have to come and get more,
yeah, I will give a,
just
a
give a
couple of a
okay.
couple of little things. So one of the things is, like, taking a beat, taking a moment, because in order to get to the point where we can use failure like data,
Mhm.
we have to learn how to manage the negative emotions around it first, because you can't get to the
Yes.
analysis,
Yes.
data, logical part of how to use the
When
information
you're emotional.
when you're
Yes.
emotional. So a large part of this, so like so much in teaching, our jobs are about so much more than
Yeah.
content, than academic standards. We have to take the time to remember our humanity,
Mhm.
right? And so there's a lot of sort of psychology and stuff behind this, and that I know makes us like sometimes uncomfortable too, because I in college I took one psych class. I'm not an
Yeah.
expert on that, but I think one of the things that's so helpful is to teach kids how to develop their own sort of action plan
Mhm.
for when you hit peak frustration and you start to have these negative, emotions around anything. Now, I usually use STEM challenges as the example because that's usually what I've used on purpose to make sure everybody fails at some point, because you can really manipulate your criteria and constraints so that even, whether they're high achievers or anywhere, you can make it so they all fail if you want to do that. And you need to do that to get them to practice. But even just to say, okay, so let's talk through this. Like, what's happening in your mind? Like, what are you, when you get to that? So like, here's what I'll do sometimes. Like when we're, having what I call an epic fail, which is a time that I've sort of intentionally set up a challenge in a way that I think most people will fail, if not all. When we hit the peak frustration where it's not productive, we'll pause. We'll usually do a gallery walk just to see how far did people get. And then from there, we'll go and we'll have kind of a class discussion. Like, what was happening for you in your brain? We do the emotional stuff first. What was what were you thinking? What were you saying to yourself or to others?
Yeah.
And that some kids are still in such a peak frustration at this point, that they might not really be wanting to participate in a discussion. Like, so I understand that, because that's where I would be. I can't, when I'm really mad and upset, I can't talk, which is weird because I'm so chatty otherwise, as you know, but like, I just can't. So I always have my own examples of like some things that I say to myself, and I'll tell them honestly, like, I think I'm dumb.
Yeah.
I'm worried that people are going to know I'm dumb, and then we talk about like, does that make sense?
Yes.
Is that reasonable? We'll kind of talk. And then we talk about like, I kind of always make fun of like the way that we sabotage ourselves because we're mad that we're failing, or we're upset or sad or embarrassed or whatever. And so what do we do? So what are you saying to yourself? And then what are you doing? Well, a lot of times what you're doing is completely counterproductive, right? Because what you're doing is you stop trying, or sometimes people get, kids rip up the paper, or like, they slam the table down, or, or they avoid and they go out and get a drink of water, or they go to the bathroom, which actually sometimes can be a good strategy.
Yes. Because they're taking a break.
They take a break.
They're
so
self-regulating.
what we do is we kind of talk through all the emotion kind of part of it. And then just kind of, isn't that funny? I wonder why do you think we do that?
Yeah.
Like, why do you think, just to become more self-aware of what's happening in our brains and stuff like that. And then from there, we kind of talk about, well, what could we should probably set up, like, I think I use the reference of like, when you first learn to ride a bike, you have training wheels, right? Like to help you. And so we should kind of come up with like a plan, like what could we do to like help our brains recover? And like when we're in that kind of,
in that state, we're in the red zone. Yeah,
the red zone. So, I mean, it always has to be something like super simple, like a 1, 2, 3 step plan. And the first one might just be like, just take a step back, like recognize I'm frustrated and mad, and make a decision that I'm going to handle it productively. And what does that mean? Right. So step 2 might be go get a drink of water.
Yeah. Go to the cool down corner. Yeah.
Take 10 deep breaths. I always think this is a good thing to let the kids develop the action plan, like come up with ideas.
I do too.
And then they can come up with their personal one, like pick their 3 as their own personal one, or you could have like a classroom 3. I think it's better if it's personalized because it'll be a little bit different for each kid.
Yes.
But even like walking around. So that's kind of like, and that piece of it was something that I covered even in last year's, like the 2020 STEMCon.
Yeah.
And this year I touch on that a little bit, but I really expand out with some other actual action types of items you can do, but managing the negative emotion has to be first.
Yeah.
And then from there, some tools for, okay, here's how we have documented what happened or whatever, what happened during the failure, so that we can actually then analyze it and then use it. And I think one of the reasons that we don't do this in classes a lot, 1, I've already said, nobody taught it to us.
No.
2, it's not in our content standards.
Yeah.
And then 3, we are so rushed.
Yes.
And I think this is another thing that goes to your point earlier about the testing and what do we do because our kids have to take these tests, right? And I think that one of the things that has been so hard for me, and I know is so hard for so many teachers, is we feel like we have to cover it all.
Yeah.
And it can't be done. and learning can't be rushed. I listened to this piece from Dr. Yen with your episode the other day, and I was like out loud, I was like, yes, yes.
Yeah.
As she was going through talking about, when you overwater a plant,
Yeah.
the way that we oversaturate our kids with content, because you're like, I have to cover it all. Guys, it's not getting in.
No,
It's not getting in anyway. It's not
Yeah.
helping. So I think, the same way that a lot of teachers have come to accept that at the beginning of your school year, you invest a lot of time in practicing processes and procedures in your classroom because it's going to save a ton of time throughout the year, but it will start to feel uncomfortable those first 2 weeks of school because you're like,
you feel like you're wasting time. Yeah.
I need to get started. I need to get started. So to me, this, like, the idea of teaching these strategies and skills around failing productively is very similar to that. It feels like it's taking a lot of time. It feels uncomfortable for you as the teacher because you're like, I'm not covering XYZ.
Yeah.
But if you are able to get your students to know how to handle themselves when they're failing and frustrated, you will save so much time, and they're going to be able to stay in and focused on activities and lessons and, yes, standardized tests when they get hard.
Yeah.
Because they've learned those skills. They say, oh, here's my brain trying to sabotage me again. Like, you learn to sort of recognize it. Okay, I'm getting frustrated. I need to pause. I need to take a minute, because and the thing is the more you do it, it's just like exercise, right? You're building up the muscle. The easier it gets to do, the less spike, negative spike you have, or emotional spike you have when you fail, because you're just like, oh, this is just part of it. This is how learning happens. And I think the thing is, in our culture, we avoid failure at all costs. It is a bad thing. It is an embarrassing thing. And it's just shameful thing.
Yeah.
So we have to, it's no wonder. Of course our kids are averse to failure. Of course they don't want to take risks. And I heard you talk about this in I think it was yesterday. When I was listening to that, it might've been a different episode, but I think it was this one, where you were talking about third graders were like able to respond to the STEM challenge with so many unique ideas and creativity. And by the time you got to the fourth graders, they were just shut down.
Yeah.
And we're just like, I don't know what to do.
They were whining.
I don't have any ideas.
Yeah.
And I hear that a lot, actually. It's really interesting. It's almost always fourth grade.
Yes.
Seems to be where
where
there's a switch, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I think that there are a lot of factors that go into that. But I think this idea of how we treat failure is really key, because if we didn't have that negativity around it, the creativity wouldn't be so compressed out of us, right? Or
it wouldn't
squashed in our little souls,
Yes. And I think that age might actually be the critical part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, now that we're even saying this out loud, I kind of feel like it's vital for these kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade kids to be doing. It's vital for them to continue to do that into fourth grade, fifth grade, and beyond. But they have to have those foundational skills. Like, they have to be doing that. That has to be a regular part of their lives.
Absolutely.
So that unfortunately, if they get in a situation where everything is prescriptive and very directed, and they can no longer, think creatively.
Y'all can't see, I'm giving her a very sad face.
It is a sad face. It is. But like, some of the programs out there they're just stifling any kind of creativity or collaboration. And if they don't have those foundations, if they don't already believe good things about themselves, then it's going to just be even harder.
Yeah. We know there's just so many things. Here's the thing I want to say. When we all go into teaching, I think we have this really beautiful, idealistic idea of what it's going to be, right? And over some time, we receive a lot of pressure to do things that are not in line with what we know are right for kids. And that's what drives a lot of us out. But as much as you can hold on to what you know is right, the thing is, guys, it works.
Yeah.
And it even works on those stupid standardized tests, because as I took a little bit more authority back for what was happening in my room, as I said to myself, I'm not going to do things that I know
Yeah. That I
it's
know.
just wrong for kids.
Yep.
Outside of administering those tests that I had to administer, but I just don't make them a big deal ahead of time. But if you teach the way you know kids need to be taught, they will do well on those tests. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we feel like, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this. If you take a step back, you might realize you don't really, because a lot of those things that you think you have to do don't work. They don't produce the results that people outside of the classroom think they're going to, going to produce anyway. So why do them? We have to just stop doing the things that don't work.
Yeah.
No,
you're right.
Teach the way as much as you can. I know some people are listening to this thinking and saying like out loud, you don't know my situation, or my principal's always in there, or whatever. And I know I can't possibly know. I can't possibly know everybody's situation. And that's true. So I know I can't speak for everybody, but I do know that I had a lot more leeway than I let myself believe initially when I was teaching, because I'm such a rule follower, like I'm going to do the things I'm supposed to do. And, and then eventually I said, you know what? No.
Yeah.
If I don't think it's right, and I think there's something better, then I'm going to do that, because I'm a professional and I've been trained and I know what I'm doing.
And you know what you're doing. And ultimately, I want them to be lifelong learners.
Yes.
I actually want them to care about learning and like love learning forever, for the rest of their lives, and not just in my whatever grade classroom where I have to get them through an assessment. I don't want that.
And I think like even that, like when we think about the way that we talk about, like, I have to get through this content, or I have to get them through this test.
Yeah.
Like it feels so heavy.
Yeah.
Because it is. And learning should, I'm not one of those people who thinks like, oh, learning should always be like fun. But I think there is some joy in almost all learning.
Yeah.
I think there's joy to be found. I'll say that.
Yes. Yes.
I don't think that necessarily you need to be like, an entertainer, like as the teacher, whatever.
But I
do think kids do need to learn. I do think kids need to learn that like sometimes things are just tough. And you have to get through them. But the thing is, like, I feel like even those things that are just tough and you have to get through them, they still, like, when you're done with them, there's still some joy to it, right? Because it's just like, oh, that was hard and I did it. Like that was awesome. I like how it feels to tax my brain. But what I don't like is a lot of this stuff that's like kind of worksheet learning. I don't even know if I want to call it learning. There's just a lot that there's no, I don't know.
It just takes it's like smaller thinking, or thinking that doesn't require.
And I wonder what we're trying to prepare kids for, really. Like, I want us to think about their, like, when they are adults.
Yeah.
What do we want for them? And is what I'm doing now likely to help them get to that? So like, I think about like, we have all kinds of friends, right? As grownups. And some of our friends are very happy, like in their chosen paths. And some of them are so unhappy, and feel stuck.
Yeah.
And don't know how to get unstuck. And I think that's part of what really drives me and my kind of like obsession with productive failure, because I think that's the reason we get stuck and then stay stuck.
Yeah.
Because we're scared of somehow a situation being worse if we try something different. Whereas I think if you're okay, like if you learn like, okay, if I do fail, this next step that I might take might be worse. There's no guarantee it's going to be better. But you know what? If it's worse, I know I can trust myself to make a different decision after that and find another path.
Yeah.
I want to figure out, what do we do for our kids to get them to adults who can do that for themselves, who say, like,
Yeah.
I'm not a victim for my circumstances.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not happy here. And so maybe it's not like, maybe I can't just quit because of course I have to pay my bills, but it's like, okay, I'm not happy here. What do I need to do? I have taken this data.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have attempted these different things, and whatever, this path isn't working for me. So what can I do next? In order to find this different path. And maybe that path, I think that's the thing. We all want guaranteed success, right? We want to know that when we quit this job and get the next job, that we're going to end up happier.
Yeah.
And because we don't know that,
Then
we
we
don't
are
take the
scared.
risk.
Yeah.
And I did that a long time. And I know a lot of people do too. That's why I'm like so invested in it. And I just think, I feel like there's so much human potential that we are not realizing, mostly based out of a fear of failure.
Yeah.
I feel like that's at the heart of so much. It's not everything. Everything's kind of interconnected, but I feel like innovation, creativity, risk-taking, and tolerance of productive failure, or like even tolerance of ambiguity.
Yes.
Something that the unknown, right? Being able to tolerate that it's an important life skill. And I think that as we've kind of gotten super hyper focused on achievement and test taking and, our standardized tests, we've moved away from core life skills that are more important than any piece of individual content.
Yeah.
And I know that's like the idea of like shifting into that focus it's such a sea change that it feels like, okay, well, how do I do that in a system where that isn't happening? And, I would just say work on your productive failure skills, because you're going to have to try some things. Some things are going to work and some things are not going to work. And I think that's the other thing that I would always feel time pressure is I don't have time for something not to work.
Yeah.
Like there is no time for something not to work.
No.
And that's what we communicate to our kids as well.
You're right.
And so they grow up thinking there's no time to actually learn a thing.
Yeah.
Because it's like everybody, especially when districts will give you like a pacing schedule and they expect everybody to stay on it.
So stupid.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Like, no, that's not gonna work. But it's what we try to do. Yeah. Our district gives it to us, and then we give it to our kids, and then we say, "I'm so sorry you didn't learn how to add fractions."
Yeah.
But our unit is
time
over.
to move on.
It's our time. Our unit is over, and now it is time to move on to geometry.
Yeah.
Like it's so weird. Like
it is so weird. And it's like the opposite of differentiation. So I'm always like, how do you have standardization and differentiation at the same time? It's not possible. It makes me so frustrated. Yes, that's so true. It's so important.
And I also think like this is kind of a thing that just in our society in general, like this, like being so busy all the time and so rushed.
Yeah.
It keeps us from being able to reflect deeply on why we're doing the things we're doing and whether they're worth that time, and
that's so
it's
true.
So like, that's one of the things that I used to always love about, the summer for teaching, because I felt like that was when I actually got to reflect.
Yeah.
But it was like, some of that reflection would have been really helpful when I still had my students during the school year, and I'm like, realizing all these things over the summer and try to do it better for the next group of kids.
After it's too late with those past students. Yes.
Right. And I think that, that's, I think that's one of the things that it's so important, the time for reflection. And that's what we don't get a lot of.
Yeah.
And I also think we need to think about that same sort of thing for our students, because we're trying to rush the learning, and learning just can't be. No. It just can't be rushed. And so even like, I also am doing a session at STEMCon that's on the post build. So like when you're doing a STEM challenge, all the stuff that comes when the build is done.
When it's over, yes.
And that's sort of, to me, these are really overlapping ideas.
Sure. Yeah.
With the failure and all of that as well. But it's, it's because when I first started doing STEM challenges, and I think this happens to almost all teachers, we spend all our time up front on like having the students do their planning and their building. And then we run out of time.
We don't
Like class period's over.
Yep.
And then we just hope that they sort of like osmotically, I don't know if that's a word, but through osmosis, like somehow put together all the pieces and the meaning of what happened during that STEM challenge. And we don't get back to like actually analyzing it and talking about it and all the deep, beautiful like learning that can come from a STEM challenge happens after the build. And we rush through it. And we do that not just with STEM challenges, we do that with a lot of activities. And please understand that when I'm saying, because I'm always so reluctant to say anything that will ever make a teacher feel like bad about what they're doing in their classroom, because there's plenty of that out in the world. And whatever you're doing, I know how much work, I know what you're doing. Like, I know how much work, and I don't say any of this in a negative way.
Oh, no,
and I don't say any of this from high up on a hill that I haven't done myself. I look back on some things I've done in my classroom over the years, like, and I just cringe. And it's actually,
me too.
It's a thing that I say in my session as well for failure. It's just like, one of the things we can do with kids is teaching them how to reframe failures. And so for me, when I look back, as I said, I just cringe at some of the stuff that I said and did and didn't do. Of course, there's always so much we didn't do. But then a way to reframe that is, 10 years, 20 years into my career, if I could look back at the beginning and I don't see any growth. I don't see anything that I would cringe about 20 years later. Like that.
And I haven't grown. Yes,
that would be cringy. Like that, because I was never going to be perfect at the beginning. So if I wasn't way better 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, 20 years down the line, that would be the thing to be embarrassed about.
Yeah, I agree.
Like the fact that I didn't, know everything. I still don't know everything. You're never going to know everything.
No, of course not. That's all part of growing. But but I think that is such an important part. And you're right. We very often, and I don't think you're saying that in judgment. Because I don't feel judged. And I've done that many times where I'm like, okay, we're at the end. It's over. We've got to clean up. And, but you're right. That's where some like true learning is taking place, like changing of thinking.
Because you need so like during the build, we all know like it's exciting and it's kind of chaotic and there's like all this stuff going on. Right. And so if we don't have the sort of quieter reflection time, and during that time, we do a number of things, right? It's not just like all like silence, but I do think there's like some need for some like quiet time. Where you're thinking about different questions around, what just happened.
So you can actually process what just occurred.
And they don't process
and make the connections.
Right. And we got to move on to the next thing. Right. And so we experience that as teachers all the time. Right. There's just not as much time as we would like to reflect, which is why I do enjoy when you do have a moment in the teacher's lounge in a positive like conversation where oh, wow, that, I can get something from this that I can use in my classroom, or really good PD, which we know is, I won't say, I can't speak for everybody, but for me, it was always far and few between.
Oh gosh,
like actual quality PD.
Yes.
Because it's that moment away from your normal life where you're thinking about your practice and realizing, oh, I have done it this way before, and maybe I want to try it this other way. You don't even necessarily have to buy into what the presenter is saying as much as like, I'll give it a shot. Let me see if that actually ends up working for me. But I think that's another thing that we can try to do more for our kids, so that it's not always about talking the talk of like, try again, and growth mindset, and learning that, you're learning. And we care more about the process than the product. If that's true, then we need to create more space for the learning part, which is messy and takes time. And when I say messy, I don't necessarily mean a physical mess, although sometimes it like with a STEM challenge, it can be a physical mess, but it's not going to be a straight line. It's not going to be a straight path. It's not going to be necessarily a predictable amount of time that it takes. And so we have to try to figure out where can we build in flexibility, and to show that we actually believe the things we're saying to them, because they're going to watch your actions. They're going to watch what we do. And so when we say the things that sound pretty, but we don't actually walk the walk afterwards, they learn what to believe. And it's based on what walk you're walking, not what talk you're talking, you know?
Oh, Kerry, that was so good. I totally agree. Like there was times I was crying and yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming back again.
Thank you for having me. I always love coming.
Yeah, it was just so good. So you got to join us at STEMCon. We're going to say that again. It's going to be a breath of fresh air. It's going to give you a new perspective. Oh, so good. Wasn't that unbelievable? Oh, I swear, every time she just like rocks my world. I don't even know how else to say it. It's just it's exciting. It's just so important. I hope that you'll join us. This one tired teacher is gonna be resting a lot so that I can have the best time this weekend at STEMCon 2021. Until next time, sweet dreams and sleep tight.